Welcome to Keto and Crime. I am back. If you were watching this when it first releases, you were watching this on Friday, May 3rd. This is covering what happened Thursday, May 2nd in the Chad Daybell trial. With that being said, I'm going to dive right into it. My name is Tracy. I run this channel. I do Holiday Tree, which is currently on Cinco de Mayo. My content is true crime deep dives, horror movie reviews, and dark history. There's tons of information on this case on my channel, as well as reviews of all of Chad Daybell's books. I have covered the 𝗚𝗏 trial day by day and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial day by day. Now, what I normally do is listen to the live stream, look over all the summaries, take notes myself, because I do have a day job. I have to do it in between things. And I try to condense the 6 to 8 hours of courtroom going on into as tight and compact a time as possible, with always hitting the high points so that you have a good idea of what happened every day in the trial. That's what I do. Today, Thursday, was a highly emotional day with some of Chad Daybell's family, as well as Kay Woodcock testifying. So let's dive in. When court first adjourns, Kay Woodcock is called by Attorney Rob Wood, and she begins her testimony by looking at displays of JJ. She is asked who that is, and she said, "My grandson, JJ Vallow." Now remember, Kay is Charles Vallow's sister. She was, her and her husband Larry had a son who, and a girlfriend that evidently had some substance abuse problems, and they were the actual biological parents of JJ. He eventually came to live with the Woodcocks, but he was born 10 weeks premature. As we all know, he was on the spectrum, and the older couple just could not care for him, and Charles was then married to Lori. It seemed to be a very happy, idealistic family, and so they adopted JJ, and that's how JJ came to live with Charles and Lori. And then she explains that entire process. He was born with a different name, Canaan Trahan, and then they eventually changed his name to Joshua James Vallow, thus JJ. They said when they first moved to be with the Vallows that they would see him every 2 to 3 months. When Charles and Lori, Tylee, and the family moved to Hawaii, they would help fly Kay over so she could visit JJ. She said he was very close with Charles, and Lori was very good to him. She felt that they had made the right decision. They would also send JJ by plane to Louisiana to visit his grandparents. And then Wood shows a picture of Tylee on the screen, and Kay responds, "That is Tylee." She was then asked if she ever met Alex Cox. She said a handful of times, but she doesn't recall ever having a real conversation with him. Wood then asked Kay if she saw JJ in January of 2019. She says that this is approximately when Charles and Lori separated. She said that she had flown out to Arizona at the end of January to help Charles with JJ because Charles was very distraught, and that is when Lori had disappeared. So she said she saw him then. She said that after their separation, she would bring JJ home for large swaths of time to stay with them in Louisiana. Particularly, Charles was working. Remember, Charles moved to Houston. Kay and Larry helped him with that move to Houston because he wanted to be closer to Louisiana, Texas and Louisiana, right on the border there. So basically, Houston was 150 miles from where they lived in Louisiana, as opposed to 1,000 miles. So she said that Charles' relocation to Houston had part to do with work and part to do with JJ. She said that in mid-April 2019, Lori visited Houston. Charles was really trying to reconcile with Lori to put the family back together, but Lori was not interested. Charles was a financial planner, had his own business, and he asked Kay to help him with his business. She did his payroll, his accounts payable, his Excel spreadsheets. Kay had access to her email accounts, and she basically continued, she said, to see JJ in May, and then Charles started visiting Kay and driving over to Lake Charles on weekends so JJ could visit with them. And basically, she said at that point, Charles, they had done away with the family home in Chandler. So he had his home in Houston, and he basically rented that house that is in the infamous video the day Charles died for Lori and Tylee and JJ. She said that it was obvious that they were headed for divorce, and then they skipped to the day she was informed that Charles had been shot, July 11th, 2019. And when Wood asked Kay, how did your brother die? She said 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. Wood then asked Kay if she had ever had a conversation with her brother about being the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. And she says yes, that there was $1 million policy. And basically, Kay had committed to Charles that she would give his 2 adult sons by his previous marriage $250,000 each, and use the other to help raise JJ, because I believe Charles figured that JJ would be better off with them. So it was $500,000 for Larry and Kay to raise JJ, and $500,000 to be split between his 2 older sons, because he knew, especially now with Lori, that his family would never see any of that money. She said that she never spoke with Charles again about the policy. She didn't know that she was the beneficiary until the life insurance company called. So Charles just made that change. The beneficiary does not have to sign off on it. As long as you have their contact information, their social security number, and their name, that's all you need. And she said that she didn't realize it until after she was contacted by the insurance office after Lori had attempted to claim the life insurance. And then she said Lori never really spoke to Kay after that. She did get one nasty text from Lori after Lori had found out about the life insurance, asking, is this why you want JJ? I've got 5 kids and no money, and you get everything. So basically, Lori was very upset about the money. Kay tells about the 7th birthday party she had for him in May 2019 at a pizza place with his friends and cousins in Louisiana, and she said it was the last birthday she ever saw him. The last time she saw JJ was August 10th, 2019, when she FaceTimed with him. She said after Charles died, it became almost impossible to get in contact with Lori. Kay says that from the time Charles was murdered to August 10th, she was only able to see JJ on FaceTime twice, and she never really had any contact. She would text, she would call, and she would get one-word responses from Lori saying, I don't have any time for you right now, or she would just not answer at all. Kay tried to make arrangements for JJ to attend his dad's memorial service in Louisiana. Kay bought the plane ticket, everything was set, but after Lori found out about the insurance, Lori said they were too busy to send JJ and moving to Hawaii, so JJ would not be attending. So stellar Mother of the Year there. And then Kay says that she didn't know Charles had died until the day after, when Lori texted his 2 oldest sons, and one of the sons contacted Kay and Larry at that time. She said she thought it was a joke, but then she Googled it and found out what had happened. She said she was very fearful for JJ since Charles was dead, because she really felt that Charles was the only thing standing between JJ and disaster. And she then upped her tries to get in touch with JJ. And then she finally started speaking with law enforcement about all her concerns. After Brandon Boudreaux's attempted shooting, Kay and Brandon began talking. They compared notes. They realized that they were in much the same boat. Brandon was lucky enough to have custody of his children, whereas Kay was still trying to get in contact and get custody of JJ. And then with some of that life insurance money and Brandon chipping in 50%, they hired a private investigator to see what was going on. Since Kay had access to all of Charles's electronics, she started deep diving into the bank accounts, the emails, and then she noticed the email from Amazon, and that is where she realized that Lori had bought her own wedding ring with Charles's credit card on Amazon, and this was on November 8th, 2019. But of course, we know the actual purchase was October 2nd, just 2 weeks before Tammy Daybell died. And then she said she was just absolutely shocked when she read about Tammy Daybell's or heard about Tammy Daybell's death. And then her and Larry had offered rewards for the safe return of JJ or any information. And then she talked about Lori going to jail for failing to produce the children and her arrest in Hawaii. And then when she was told, she just broke down talking about when she found out about the bodies of JJ and 𝗙𝗨, because it's obvious that they also considered 𝗙𝗨 a granddaughter too. And I have no doubt that if things had gone differently, if Lori had done the right thing and just sent JJ to live with his grandparents, I have no doubt that 𝗙𝗨 might have gone too, because the Woodcocks had love for her too. And Wood tries to comfort her and then tenders the witness, and Pryor begins his cross-examination. He asked her about all the moving around Lori and Charles did, and she said it really wasn't as much as you think. They lived in Hawaii. They lived in Arizona, Hawaii, then in Arizona again, and then Charles moved to Houston after the separation. Pryor asks Kay if she knew Lori spent 60 days in Hawaii. Kay said that she learned that Lori made several trips to Hawaii during a 3-month span, and was not taking JJ. JJ ended up with Charles from the 1st of February to the first part of April. So you can see that she was doffing JJ off on Charles so she could do her shenanigans. And then once the money became involved, I believe she saw JJ as a cause of the fact that she was now broke, and that is the reason, I'm speculating, but I really believe the money is what really caused Lori to turn. I believe if Charles had just rolled over and given her everything in a divorce, that she probably would have given up JJ for that privilege, but as it were. And I'm not saying Charles should have done that. Absolutely, Charles should have stood up for himself. I'm just saying it's just telling about the true mental state of Lori Vallow. And then Pryor talks about some of the other goings on back and forth, the fights between Charles and Lori, and she says she's well aware there was animosity there, And then Pryor asks Kay when the beneficiary was changed back to her. She says she isn't sure Charles did that on his own. They did talk about it, but that's all she knew. And then he asked about her Amazon search, and she said that she found the email in Charles's email about the purchase, but it was obviously made on October 2nd. She asked if Chad had access to Lori's Amazon account, and Kay says, I have no idea what Chad Daybell had access to. Kay says that Lori was buying wedding stuff on Charles' credit card, and Pryor just basically shuts his damn mouth and releases. And then Wood comes back with a redirect. She asks Kay to clarify the dates for the Amazon searches. She said she found the purchases in November, but they were made in early October. Wood releases her. And then the next witness called by the state is Angela Yancey. She is going to be questioned by Deputy DA Rocky Wixom. She lives in Idaho Falls and had previously worked in payroll and benefits for the Sugar-Salem School District. She had a lot of interaction with Tammy as far as benefits, pay, that sort of thing, and that she also was part of that benefits meeting where we already heard Taylor, the insurance broker, had spoken, and she, did everything from the medical to the life insurance. Yancey says when Tammy was first hired, she elected for the minimum amount of life insurance, about $10,000, even though a $50,000 policy was offered on top of that for all the employees. So the first year of Tammy's employment, she had $50,000 from that bonus policy, as well as the elective of $10,000. And so she had $60,000 of life insurance during her first year. She did not increase the amount during her second year. Then she says that she explains kind of the process between how employees can increase their life insurance. She says the employee simply fills out a form at the beginning of the school year during open enrollment, which runs from August to September, and they can increase up to 5 times their salary. So if you make $30,000, you can actually get up to $150,000 of life insurance coverage. And then once the employee fills out that form, the school district simply supplies it to the insurance broker, Taylor, and then the insurance company takes over from there. And then they put a picture of Tammy Daybell's change of life insurance form on the screen during the 2019 school year, and she said that she increased the life insurance by an additional $80,000, which was the maximum. So between that 100 and the 60,000 she already had, she added the additional 80,000, and now we're up to 140,000, which shows that school librarians don't make a whole lot. Teachers are just drastically underpaid. The next, and then they show a next exhibit, which is Chad and Tammy Daybell's signature on the form, because Tammy had elected spouse coverage for Chad. So she also took out a rider on her insurance to cover Chad for $20,000, and it had increased from $10,000 the previous year because the insurance was on him. He had to sign it. And then she then explains that, again, open enrollment goes from August into September, and the effective date is September 1st, but they have until September 15th to make their decision, and that Tammy filled out her form on September 8th. And then she talked about October 21st, when Chad went into the district office. This is 2 days after Tammy died, and asked Yancey about claiming the benefits. And she said that she would need a death certificate, but she would take care of all the paperwork. And then Chad said, "That's okay. I've ordered 8 of them." And Yancey just said she went, "What?" Because ordering 8 death certificates is not normal. She then gave Chad the claim form, explained the process, and then noted just how quickly Chad had come into the office, that Tammy had passed away on a Saturday, and she was in the office on Monday and had already ordered death certificates. She said this was just wow. And then they show the beneficiary statement on the screen that Chad filled out. The first question on the form is, when did the health of the deceased first become impaired? And Chad wrote October 18th, 2019, the day before she died. All this talk about how she was going downhill for months and months all culminated in him saying she got sick on October 18th, 2019, which shows just how full of shit he is. And then they show the employer portion that Yancey had filled out and everything she had put there. And then they showed a check for $130,000 check that was cut from LifeMap to Chad Daybell that was dated November 18th, 2019. So they paid in about 3 weeks, less than a month. And that he received 100% of the policy. There was no other beneficiaries included. You can have multiple beneficiaries. Yancey said that most of the time she has to seek out employees' families to remind them of the life insurance. Most of them are so distraught that they forget about the life insurance. It's only after the funeral and the memorials and some grieving time has passed, that whoever is left thinks about finances and then might remember there's life insurance. But he came in there very quickly. She said it was just very unusual. And then he did return the claim form on October 25th, so another week. But Yancey was out of town until October 30th, and then Chad immediately visited her on the 30th, and that's when they filed the claim. So literally, they paid out within a week. And then Wixom rests, and Pryor is cross-examining. He asked her if the number of death certificates would pertain to how many entities need copies for policies. Yancey says that's correct, but 8 was just an exorbitant amount. Usually people don't have more than 2 or 3 insurance policies. And then Pryor asks, what are the factors that people look at when getting insurance? And she said the size of the family, the amount that they need to live on month to month, the amount of time it may take the surviving head of household to increase their income. And then Pryor asked Yancey if she was aware of Chad's employment and the fact he didn't have health insurance. She said she was not, that she didn't, normally delve into those things. Pryor asked Yancey what Tammy's salary was, and Pryor suggests, was it about $16,000 for working 35 hours a week? And Yancey says that sounds about right. But she said, I oversaw 200 employees and they all had differing salaries based on the type of work they did, the amount of hours they worked, whether they were on a 9-month or a 12-month pay scale for the school system. Lots of people work for the school system for nothing but benefits. My mother worked for the school system in the cafeteria, and believe me, she made about $13,000 a year. She worked just so that we had decent health insurance. She said that the life insurance is one of the benefits that the amount the insured, that is the employee, pays does not increase dramatically if they add people to it. Whereas if they add, additional people to their health insurance, those premiums that they have to pay do go up. Pryor then says no further questions, and 𝗥𝗏𝗃 redirects. 𝗥𝗏𝗃 asked why the situation was dramatic, because Yancey has said that it was very traumatizing. She said anytime the death of an employee happens, it's very traumatic because you get to know those people very closely. And then with everything surrounding this case, the involvement of Lori, the missing children, she said this has just been quite traumatic for everyone in the schools district. 𝗥𝗏𝗃 has nothing further, and Yancey is released. Then there's a short break, and then the prosecution calls Sheila Daybell, who is Chad Daybell's mother, to the stand, with Ingrid Beatty questioning her. She is married to Jack Daybell. They have 5 children, Chad, Paul, Matt, Brad, and Becky. And note that Matt has actually been in the courtroom since the previous day, but supporting the Woodcocks. He obviously has no love for his brother. She says the last time she saw Tammy was October 13th at their home in Rexburg, that Sheila and Jack traveled for a baby blessing, and she says that Tammy seemed fine when she visited. Now, this is 5 days before Tammy died. Chad called Sheila on October 19th to say Tammy had died. She and Jack immediately drove to Idaho. She says Chad was upset, and the children were upset, and she attended Tammy's memorial service. Beatty asked Sheila about the middle of November 2019 when Sheila met Chad for dinner at a Texas Roadhouse in Idaho Falls that Lori Vallow also attended. Sheila said she had never met nor heard of Lori prior to this moment, and that she noticed that Chad and Lori had rings on. Jack asked them if they were engaged, and he said, no, we're married. And the mother noted this was a month after Tammy's death. Lori told Sheila her husband had recently died of a heart attack. She said she had a daughter who died, but didn't. This is interesting that she tells the story a lot, but didn't say how old the child was. Lori didn't say anything about having a young son, and Chad didn't say anything when Lori mentioned these things. So, yeah. Sheila said, I didn't know where they were living at the time. She assumed Idaho, probably on the Daybell property, but a few weeks later, she learned they had moved to Hawaii. Sheila said she would talk to them on the phone, but they never mentioned Lori having young children. And so just, again, Chad dropped this on his mother the same way he dropped it on everybody. And now Pryor will cross-examine. Pryor asked Sheila to say the names of her children and in-laws, and if they're in the courtroom, to say the color of the shirt they're wearing. And of course, she describes Matt, who's wearing a green shirt. Pryor then asked Sheila about Emily, her daughter-in-law, providing her with information about Lori having a daughter. She said that, after she did some further questioning, she found out about JJ and 𝗙𝗏, and that she met with a Lieutenant Ron Ball of Rexburg in December of 2019. Sheila said, overall, Lori was friendly and upbeat to me. Pryor asked her, was she charming, convincing, or persuasive? Sheila says, yes, I would use those words. And Sheila asked he asked Sheila if Chad was shy, and she said he can be. And he said, would you say it was fair to say he's an introvert? She goes, not an introvert, but he's certainly not a full extrovert either. Not gregarious was the exact words. Pryor asked Sheila if it shocked her that he went from somebody like Tammy, who was quite reserved, more of a traditional Mormon wife, to somebody like Lori. And she said that it's honestly not unusual for people to move quickly for marriage within the LDS religion. That oftentimes they feel that keeping a family unit going is more important than traditional grieving and stuff like that. So it's not unusual for men especially to move very quickly within the LDS religion. Then she asked him about the day that Tammy died. Did Chad seem very upset? She said to her it seemed like Chad was acting like a partner who had just lost his wife. Prior then dismisses that Beatty does have a couple of redirect questions. She asked Sheila if it's common in the LDS faith to get married after your spouse dies. And she again says it's not super common. I mean, what Pryor had addressed was, overall marriage can move quickly, but she said it's not, to get married within a month is not super common, but people do move quickly. I guess she was talking within terms of 6 months to a year is more what she's talking about, but within a month, that's not common. And then Sheila is released from the stand. Next witness is Heather Daybell, who is Chad Daybell's sister-in-law, married to his brother Matt. There's a very quick sidebar that takes about 10 minutes because Pryor wants her excluded because he fears that she was too close to Tammy. Boyce rules that that rule does not apply to her as she's actually a member of Chad's family. So basically, they begin questioning. Heather has recently had surgery, so she may have to take some breaks during the testimony. She says her and Matt have been married 30 years, started dating 35 years ago, and she has known Chad for more than 30 years. Heather said that there was a normal amount of contact for a brothers and sister-in-laws over the years with Tammy. She said that they had a rather good relationship with them. We were very cordial. We would see them at holidays, family functions. Wasn't super close, but wasn't distant. She said that in 2014, the relationship they had with Chad and Tammy changed when Chad became obsessed with what she called the end of times and was publishing Julie Rowe's books. Heather said she was not comfortable with anything that Chad was saying, and that Chad indicated a earthquake would be happening in 2015, and this would be the sign of the beginning of the end times, and it would cause a lot of destruction in the Salt Lake City area, and she called bullshit. She said that he said that both he and Julie Rowe had seen these things in prophecies and visions. And then when Chad said he was moving his family to Rexburg because he thought Rexburg would be part of New Jerusalem, that's when she basically said, I'm done. Then she just felt that he was going way overboard with the religiosity. Chad said he was going to be telling people about destructions and visions, writing books about it, and this is when he started cranking out his doomsday novels and things like that, and that he was trying to spread this among their ward and get people on his side and actually convince people, like the Gilberts, to move with them. So, yeah, it's just weird. She said that when Chad and Tammy went to look for homes in Idaho, they didn't find a home they liked. They asked if they could store some stuff in a shed. Heather and Matt agreed to let them store some stuff in their shed. And because they were under the impression they wouldn't be moving very soon, but they did move very soon, within just a few months. They basically put in an offer on a home and took off. Basically, they said they put in an offer near them and would be. So basically, they called within a couple of weeks and told Heather that they had bought a house near them in Rexburg, and Heather was so distraught she started crying and begged Matt to talk them out of moving because she didn't want those crackpot. I mean, at least Chad the crackpot near them. But basically, he said it was too late. The home was already under contract. So she said she tried to help Tammy move with the move, but the relationship with Chad was becoming very strange and deteriorating. She said that Tammy seemed very distraught, that she would often roll her eyes behind Chad's back. And Heather says that Chad was becoming very cold and distant with Tammy. So this is information that I haven't heard before. I haven't really concentrated on Chad's family. Perhaps I should, but it's obvious that Tammy was smarter than we gave her credit for. I wish she had gotten out of there. I wish she just divorced him and gotten out of there, or at least left him. It's just such a waste of what I think was a very good woman. She said she was becoming Heather said she was becoming very concerned over Tammy and Chad's treatment of her. And basically, Chad told Heather not to question his wife. If she had questions about their home or their beliefs, that she should ask him, not Tammy. And Heather basically gave him the middle finger, metaphorically, and made sure that she also spoke to Tammy, because Tammy was a grown woman. Tammy said that even though she wasn't overly thrilled about the move, she had prayed about it and felt that maybe overall it was good for the family, and that she didn't feel that she had any confirmation that what Chad was dreaming or premonizing would actually happen. They lived about a half mile from Heather and Matt's. And so Heather took some food over when they got there. She gave some suggestions on doctors, schools, visiting the house. And then they show some pictures of the Daybell home. And Heather confirms that is the house and kind of gives an idea of the layout. Basically, she talked about an area of the house that they called the cozy cone. She says you can go up some stairs. Even though the house was primarily one story, there was some stairs that kind of was a little cozy little nook up there, like a storage area. And that's where, when Garth moved in with them, that's where he stayed. So the bedroom that Tammy Daybell was in no way, shape, or form upstairs. She said that there was in the main part of the home, and to get from the cozy cone to the Daybell bedroom, you would have to go up or down some stairs. But unless Chad was working in the cozy cone, which it was Garth's room, she doesn't understood why he would be. He had an office on the first floor, that the stairs would not have played into that. They talked about they were in the same church ward as Chad and Tammy. They did see each other at church. She tried to avoid Chad, but would try to talk with Tammy and the children. Matt and Heather were at a work conference in Las Vegas the morning of October 19th, when Matt got a call from his parents saying that Tammy had died. They didn't know much about it, but they were on their way to see Chad. And Heather says she just broke down at that point. Matt, basically, Heather called Chad and she expressed her condolences and shock and asked what happened to Tammy. Chad said Tammy hadn't been feeling well. She started coughing around 10 p.m., went to sleep. At around midnight, she started coughing and vomiting, but went back to bed. Chad said he slept from midnight to 6 a.m. because the sheet on him came off when he heard a thud. Again, in this story, he's saying that he was awakened by Tammy rolling off the bed. Heather said she felt that Chad had concocted the story. It just didn't sound right to her. I mean, Heather does not like Chad. And said asked if they were going to do an autopsy. That Chad said the coroner had come and looked and found that there was something the matter with her throat that caused her to die, which is not. It was unknown, later pulmonary embolism, later asphyxiation. It was never something wrong with her throat. And then when Chad told Heather the funeral would be in 2 days, Heather said, we haven't even gotten home from Las Vegas, and another brother was out of town, and Mark's still on his mission. What are you doing? But basically, that they just wanted to get it done. So Heather and Matt left their work conference in Las Vegas early and went home to Springfield as quick as they could. Heather said the opening song of the funeral was "Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel." All the Chad and all the kids spoke. The bishop spoke. And basically, she said she was surprised because "Put Your Shoulder to the Wheel" is a song about work and pushing along, not necessarily a song of grief. She said that she felt Chad was very disingenuous. He would cry at the proper moments, but when nobody was looking, he was just kind of sitting, metaphorically staring off. He seemed to be putting on an act, is basically what she's trying to say. Uh, she, basically, then Heather said about 3 to 4 weeks after the funeral, she learned Chad had remarried. His children were struggling and upset with that decision. She reached out in a group text to his kids to let them know that she was there for them. He said Chad called Heather and was upset, said Heather had been a lifelong problem to him and his family, and she needed to back off. Heather said, I asked him, who the heck did you marry? And he said, Lori. And Heather asked if he had been cheating on Tammy with her. He wouldn't answer her. Chad said that Tammy had died of a pulmonary embolism because Tammy had gained 40 pounds. And Heather said that was absolute bullshit. Tammy had never put on that much weight, that she was still way average weight for her age and height. And then Chad told Heather he was moving to Hawaii, so she wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. And basically, they had a big argument, and she did not meet. She did not want to meet Lori at all. And then she basically asked Chad, how the heck can you get married so quickly after your wife died? And were you cheating on Tammy? And this time he actually said he admitted that he had met Lori about a year before Tammy died. And so you did cheat on her, and he never would say anything. So basically they just kept arguing. She told him he was a cruel, heartless man to do this to his children. And so basically then they break for lunch. After lunch, she basically said she has not spoken to Chad's children since JJ and 𝗙𝗍 were found buried on the property. Heather said that she Heather tells about the trip Tammy made to Utah a few weeks before she died. Heather says Tammy didn't like to travel alone, so it was abnormal. She was quite upset about having to travel alone. Basically, Tammy was same old Tammy, but you could tell there was some sadness with her. Then 𝗥𝗏𝗻 shows a photo of a staircase going up to the cozy cone area of the Daybell house. The next photo was a piano and a little drum set. Heather says that, yes, that was the cozy cone. They did keep some musical instruments up there. We also see then they also see a photo displaying more musical instruments. And 𝗥𝗏𝗻, who's questioning Heather, asked her if she knows who David Hope is. She said yes. He is her daughter's father-in-law. Hope is a retired police detective in Rexburg. She said she rarely had contact with Hope. They did attend a baby blessing together, but she has never spoken to Hope about this case. Basically, then she talks about a lot of church work she was doing while the search for JJ and 𝗙𝗍 were going on. Basically, Heather was also in charge of sending out letters from the ward to certain members if the bishop has concerns. And that one of those letters went to Chad. Basically, the bishop and most of the ward was concerned about how quickly he had moved on, and just a whole lot of weirdness and a lot of his teachings. I mean, the ward had a lot of concerns about Chad, evidently. And so basically that's the end of the testimony. Pryor begins to cross-examine. He asked her about speaking to Detective Mattingly in February of 2020. Heather at that time expressed concerns that Chad was doing his writings inside the LDS church building, even though they were counter to a lot of LDS teachings. She said that she noticed his car at the church quite a bit. Pryor asked about Chad having these unusual teachings, but he was able to maintain his LDS membership. Heather says that's correct. She was the executive secretary of the ward. But even though they had concerns, it wasn't enough to force him out of the ward. I mean, he was writing fiction. Basically, Heather says in 2014, Julie Rowe became an issue as he was publishing her books, and the Mormon Church had a whole lot of problems with Julie Rowe's books. She said they had a whole lot of problem with preparing a people and a vow anyway. It's more of a prepper's website rather than an LDS website, although a lot of LDS are a member. This is another voice of warning and preparing a people. We've all heard about those podcasts and conferences and things like that. He also said, why were you concerned that Chad had chosen a home so close to you? And she said it was just unnerving to have him that close to them. He asked her, did she have access to everyone's information in the ward as executive secretary? She said, absolutely. But she only sent out letters at the behest of the bishop. She did not just take it upon herself to send out letters to people. And then he asked her more about Chad's beliefs and the problems it was causing in the ward. She said that, again, she didn't get involved in what the bishops were deciding. She did know that she was asked to send a couple of letters to Chad about what he was espousing. And then she asked about how they confronted Chad about his teachings. And she said that Matt did confront him a lot more than she did about it. She normally just spoke to Tammy. He has no questions. 𝗥𝗏𝗃 redirects and asks Heather if it's fair to say someone having an adulterous relationship could be construed with somebody had met somebody a year before their wife's death and remarried and married them a month after. And she said, in her opinion, yes. 𝗥𝗏 then asked, was Chad not disciplined? She said that Chad was was also a secretary of sorts within the ward, and she does believe he was removed from that position, but she doesn't know for sure as a result of both the Julie Rowe books and the potential for him having an adulterous relationship. And so a little bit more about back and forth about church doctrine as opposed to what Chad was teaching. And then she talked about, he asked her again about why Chad had called her a pot stirrer. She says, I wasn't a pot stirrer. I just happened to be in the mix. But I did stick up for Tammy. I did stick up for his children, and he didn't like that. And then she's dismissed, and the next witness is retired police officer David Stubbs. He's a former police officer in Rexburg, and Rob Wood will question him. He retired about 3 months ago, but he was a supervisor in the detective division, and he had been a detective since 2010. He was responsible for digital forensics, so he was tracking things via cell phone and would investigate phones, tablets, computers, anything electronic. He said he first became involved in this case November 1st, 2019, when Arizona authorities asked them to look for Charles Vallow's Jeep. He said he was part of the surveillance team that was surveilling Lori Vallow and the crew trying to find the Jeep. And then they also became aware of Chad Daybell's involvement as a result of that tracking. They talk about the day they followed Chad and Lori to lunch and to the, I think it was Hobby Lobby they went to, that sort of thing. And he said he was only partially involved in that particular day of surveillance, but he did get to see the videos afterwards. And then in November 26, when the department got Kay Woodcock's call about doing a welfare check on JJ, both he and another officer went to Lori's apartment to try to make contact with her. He said they went to apartment 175, knocked on the door. She answered. Police said that they were inquiring about a welfare check for her son because the grandmother was concerned. And then they admit the body cam footage of that welfare check. Lori told Stubbs that JJ was in Arizona with Melanie Gibbs. Lori said Alex Cox was the only other one in the apartment. Stubbs asked Lori if she knew Chad Daybell, and that is when she said he was Alex's friend. And then they played the rest of that body cam footage. So basically the video plays, it takes a little while to play out. And then they asked Stubbs about his thoughts about that. He said he had several concerns after his conversation with Lori. He said he found no evidence that Lori's brother had been in her apartment or even in the area. He said that he never found evidence that Kay was taking JJ out because, Lori told them that she was concerned that they were trying to steal her son. He then went to BYU, Idaho, and found no evidence of 𝗙𝗵𝗏 ever being enrolled there after Lori had told him that they moved here because 𝗬𝗨 was going to college. Stubbs says that Melanie Gibb was not in Arizona that day. She was in Utah because he was one of the ones that reached out, and that it was obvious that from the video surveillance they had already been doing because of the Jeep and the Brandon Boudreaux situation, it's obvious that she was more than an acquaintance of Chad Daybell. And then we have the whole incident with Chad basically saying he didn't know her that well, did not have her number. So they were obvious liars. And then Stubbs said he was overall concerned about their overall state of mind because of all the delusions or lies that they were telling. And that they did end up coming back to the apartment because they could never get in touch with Melanie Gibb to confirm JJ was with them. So during the second visit, he said they went back to the apartment. They show the body cam footage of that welfare check. She knocks on the door. Lori opens the door and says Melanie is at Frozen 2 and tells Stubbs to call Melanie and have her return the officer's phone call. She said they were never able to verify JJ being anywhere that day, and but they were almost convinced, they were pretty well convinced, even without speaking to Melanie, that she did not have JJ. And a warrant was established the next day to search the 3 apartments, 107, 174, 175. And then Stubbs said they never saw JJ or 𝗬𝗨 the day they went back to the apartment. And testimony ends for the day. Stubbs will be back on the stand today, Friday, May 3rd, and I will be back with you either Sunday or Monday with that information. And until next time, 𝗙𝗑𝗄𝗯.